Hi, welcome back. Today I'm here with a book review for you. I'm going to be talking about Damsel by Elana K. Arnold. The reason I want to talk about this is I think this is a really wonderful book, but it has been, and I think will continue to be, a very polarizing book. So let's talk about it. Of course, the cover of this book is beautiful, but I think it perhaps belies what is inside of it, which I think is equally compelling, but maybe not what you might expect. I would say that Damsel is feminist horror dressed up like a fairy tale. Some people have been quite uncomfortable with the content, and I will get to that. There is definitely a lot of intense content in it, but I think it's an important book. I think it's a powerful book, and honestly, I think it is important to have as a YA novel for teen girls, and I'm gonna talk about why. Damsel is a book that addresses gaslighting and rape culture and the silencing of women and the sexual violence that is often enacted on female bodies, and the ways that the stories that we tell and the tropes that are in fairy tales sometimes contribute to that. And so I think this does a really great job of examining those issues. This sort of interrogates the fact that we have this trope of the prince conquers the dragon and rescues the damsel and they live happily ever after, but what if the prince is a abusive, misogynistic creep, and the damsel didn't really need rescuing in the first place? And so here we get Damsel. It is a sort of horrific fairy tale that begins with Prince Emery, who wants to become king, and in order to become king, he must conquer the dragon and rescue the damsel and marry her, and that is how you become king, because that is how it has always been done, and therefore that is how it always will be done. And so we see him go in and begin to conquer the dragon, and the next thing we see is from the perspective of Amma, this young woman who wakes up naked on horseback being held by this prince with no memory of what has happened. And I think the author does a really great job. I saw her talk about this book and loved it. I mean, I read it before I went to the talk and already was a fan, and so it was really interesting hearing her talk about this, but that I think he really does this thing where she starts asking questions about, like, well, who am I and what happened and where did I come from? And he's like, well, maybe just don't worry about it. I rescued you. Like, don't ask too many questions. Just go with it. Your life is great. I'm great. And we're gonna go and I'm gonna be king and we're gonna get married and you're gonna produce an heir. And so Amma is not content to do that, and she asks questions, and that is quite dangerous. And so in terms of content, the reason that I think there has been a bit of an uproar about this is there are multiple instances of sexual assault and sexual harassment and also animal cruelty, which is used as a parallel to the sexual violence that is being enacted on Amma. And it does a fantastic job of unpacking the ways that women are silenced and are manipulated into thinking that this is something that they just need to put up with, and the ways that these kinds of violence often come from men that they know and men that they believe that they should be able to trust, and what these toxic relationships look like. It also is a look at toxic masculinity, what that looks like, where that comes from, and how it's cyclical, because we do see bits of how the prince's father taught him these toxic forms of masculinity, and his mother, who was a victim herself, is also in some ways allowing this to continue by not doing anything about it and by supporting it. So yeah, guys, it's an intense book. It is a very quick read. It's only 300 pages long, but I think it's really powerful, and I will say the ending is very satisfying. So while it is sometimes difficult to read and difficult to get through, the ending definitely makes it worth it, because I think ultimately it is a book that is very fueled by rage and female rage, and shows the importance and the necessity, even in some situations, of a woman's anger and rage that enacts change in her life and in the lives of people around her. So guys, yeah, so it's intense, it's quite dark, it goes some intense places, but I think it's a really important book. Now, let's talk a little bit about why I think this is an important book for teenagers. And it's funny, early on at the event I went to with the author, she said exactly what I have been thinking, which is this. She said, some people have been saying that this is inappropriate content for teen girls to be reading and thinking about. And she said, well, I agree, it is. Unfortunately, it's also what they're experiencing, and therefore, let's talk about it and give them a language to deal with it and to think about it. And that is exactly my thought. And another friend of mine, we were talking about this, and she was saying, which I agree with, that it is far less damaging to have these depictions of sexual assault and sexual abuse in ways that show clearly that the author understands that it is wrong and it's problematic and that it is in fact abuse and isn't just okay and normal, than to have romanticized relationships that are unhealthy, which is something that you often do see in young adult literature. And the reality of it is, guys, teen girls at younger and younger ages are dealing with sexual assault. That's just reality. Like, teen girls deal with sexual harassment and sexual assault on a regular basis. It is not at all uncommon. And often they don't know that that's what it is. And they don't have the language for which to talk about it and think about it and recognize that, like, oh, this person pressuring me into thinking that I need to put up with this and need to go along with this because he's done something for me, for example, or is a boyfriend or whatever, is not okay. And so I think this very explicitly unravels those issues. And you even have moments where the prince will say things like, oh, well, I rescued you and I saved your life, so, you know, of course you need to kind of go along with this, like as if he deserves access to her body in these ways because he saved her life, and so of course she should be grateful and be thrilled that he's interested in her. There will also be moments where he'll say things like, oh, well, what do you expect when you look so beautiful and you wear that dress? Of course I'm going to be wanting to, you know, touch you or do things. And this happens, guys. Like, that's real. That happens. There are creepy men who do that. I mean, this is reality. And so I think this is a very important book. It is a dark book. I recognize what the content is. I know that not everybody's going to be able to read this, but I would say that if you can deal with the content that is in here, I highly recommend it. And yeah, I think it's important and necessary, and I loved it. So there you go. That is Damsel by Elana K. Arnold. Yeah, not light. A beautiful cover. Quite a dark book, but one that I think we really need, and one that I think is very timely. So talk to me in the comments down below, any of your thoughts or feelings if you guys have read this or think that you would read it or have any thoughts on any of the things that I've talked about. And let me know if you guys plan on reading it after this, because I really do recommend it. I know that some of the content may be triggering for some people, so be aware of what will and won't work for you, but I do think that it is an important book and well worth reading if you're able to do so. So again, talk to me in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.